Please tell us in detail about Rajputs, how Rajputs contained the Mughals and what sacrifices they made in doing so. Look, the Rajputs, Mughals was a much later period. When did Babur invade? When did Babur arrive in India? Let's find this. Babur was the first Mughal, right? Wasn't he? Babur, India. When did he, founder of the Mughal Empire? He when did he come to power? Which year? Let's quickly reference this untrustworthy source. Okay, 1526. 1526 is when Babur becomes king of a small part in a small region in northern India, right? 1526. But the Turkic and Arabic invasions started happening in the 700s, in the 8th century. That's a full 7 centuries before the Mughals become the power in India, right? In all these centuries, 7 centuries, the Turks were trying their best to invade and occupy India. The first part of India to fall to the Turks was Gandhar, which is now called Afghanistan, right? And it's the original Kashmir. What happened there, you saw later happen in Kashmir and other parts of India. So the Turks launched wave after wave after wave after wave of invasion of India. And they got some footholds here and there. They took Gandhar, yes. And from there, then they used Gandhar as the launch pad for launching further invasions into India. The Ghores and Ghaznavis and all, they came from Gandhar, right, which was turned into Afghanistan. And who fought? It was the Indian kings and kingdoms of that time. So if you look at the 7th century, 8th century, 10th century, 11th century, the term Rajput did not exist. This term came into existence much later. It's interesting, it would be interesting for historians to look at when does this term first appear in the historical record, or Rajput or Rajyaputra, right? So when we say Rajput today, we are referring to the kingdoms and the kings of those times, the monarchies of those times, from the 8th century to the 14th, 15th, 16th, whatever century. And who were these Rajputs? They did not call themselves Rajput at the time, right? So who were these, what we call Rajputs today? Who were these people? These were the ancient ruling dynasties of India, dating back to the late Vedic age. So they were in charge of ruling various parts of India. You had kingdoms. There were times when the whole of the subcontinent was united under a single emperor, a single empire, and there were times of fragmentation, which is what was the case when the Turks started invading India. So the Rajputs, who we now call the Rajputs, they were the Chauhans and all the various, not just the Chauhans, so many famous surnames, as we know. All these kingdoms, they fought. But the problem was that they were separated. They were not under a single unified command like what you have in an empire. So they all fought. They made tremendous sacrifices. They repelled the Turks. You know, we talk about the Hunnic invasions because it is not controversial, right? There were wave after wave after wave of Hunnic invasions of India. The Huns tried their best to invade India for like 2 centuries. And once again, Gandhar was the first part of India to fall to the Huns. Okay, and it was the Gupta emperors who repulsed the Hunnic invasions, especially Skandagupta. He spent his whole life fighting off the Huns. And eventually, after his death, the Huns were able to, capture significant portions of India and settle down. And they became Indians, of course. So the Hunnic invasion period took like 2-3 centuries. The Turkic invasions, that went on for 7 centuries before they made actual progress, real progress in the form of the Mughal Empire, right? So that 7 centuries of resistance was done by the Rajputs, but you will not find any of this given in any form of any sort of detail in your textbooks, because then you will kind of be proud of your country, right? But we are supposed to be portrayed as a country of losers. That's why our history textbooks only talk about the glories of Babur and or whatnot, this little chieftain who came from Andijan and Uzbekistan. But all the centuries of resistance to the Turks, very little is mentioned. Bapa Rawal, he's kind of semi-legendary, semi-mythical person in the imagination of lots of Indians. Most Indians probably don't even know Bapa Rawal existed. And what he did, and he reconquered many parts of what is today Pakistan from the Turks. But eventually he also passed away and things went the way it is. So the the resistance was fierce. It was centuries of resistance. Tremendous sacrifices were made. And eventually the Rajput kingdoms of the later period, like 16th century, 17th century, they were vassalized by the Mughals. And that's why lots of people like to say that the Rajputs, they became what? Allies of the Mughals. Let me tell you something. What happened after 1857? Everyone was vassalized by the British, right? But nobody taunts those. Nobody taunts those princely states and their kings whose descendants still live among us today. Nobody taunts them today. They also, you could say, sold their country because you would, if becoming a vassal means you sold your country off. Well, what the hell happened there? You see, when the occupying powers force is overwhelming, then this sort of thing happens. So eventually, after 7-8 centuries of resistance, the Rajputs eventually became vassalized by Jalaluddin. Right? Jalaluddin, what's his name? Akbar. Jalaluddin. That sort of thing. But the sacrifices were immense, and the toll that they paid was horrific. And yeah, so that's the deal. But this period of Indian history is not examined by historians, and there's very little of it in your textbooks, and that's why all these various misinterpretations exist about the Rajputs.